The moment my parents handed my sister the keys to a brand new white Mercedes, I was sitting right there, clutching a folder from the hospital, holding my surgery estimate like it was invisible. That's when I knew. Not thought, not suspected. I knew I was nothing more than an afterthought in that family. My name is Seraphina Dorn, and this story isn't about sibling rivalry or jealous comparisons. It's about survival, about the moment I realized love doesn't always come from those who are supposed to love you. Sometimes it comes from the quietest corner of your life. And sometimes the loudest betrayal doesn't scream. It sits beside you on the couch, nodding politely while giving your sister everything and giving you nothing. I wasn't asking for a car. I wasn't even asking for comfort. I was asking to live, to not be in pain every day. But in my parents' eyes, a leather interior and shiny chrome meant more than the agony twisting through my body. That night, while they cheered and clapped for Alina's hard-earned reward, I felt something deeper than pain. I felt erased, and it took someone completely unexpected to write me back into the story. This is how it happened. The first time I felt it, I thought it was just a bad meal, some greasy lunch special from the diner where I worked, or maybe too much coffee on an empty stomach. But the second time, and then the third, the pain came back stronger. It wasn't sharp at first, just a slow, dragging ache on my right side. But over the next few weeks, it started curling tighter, like a hand inside me, squeezing harder every time I ignored it. Still, I kept going. I couldn't afford to stop. I worked part-time at a coffee shop near the freeway and picked up shifts at a secondhand bookstore on weekends. Rent didn't wait. Groceries didn't care. And besides, I'd been trained since childhood to brush things off. It's just a stomach bug, I told myself. You'll be fine. I wasn't. The night I doubled over while stocking the pastry case, my manager practically dragged me to the break room. My hands were clammy, and my breath was shallow. I sat there, gripping the edge of a folding chair, while the fluorescent lights buzzed above me like judgment. A few days later, I finally went to the community clinic. The doctor ran some blood work, poked around gently, then gave me that look, the one where they try to smile but can't quite hide what they know. "You need to see a specialist," she said. The specialist confirmed it. Something was wrong, really wrong, the kind of wrong that doesn't go away with ginger tea and a heating pad. "You might need surgery," he told me, tapping the pen against my chart. Soon. That one word, surgery, hit like cold water. I didn't have insurance. I barely had savings. What I had was a shoebox under my bed, with maybe $400 in it, and a prayer that I'd make rent on time next month. So I did what I never liked doing. I asked for help. It was a Tuesday night. I waited until after dinner, until the kitchen was quiet, and the TV was murmuring in the background. Mom was half scrolling through her phone. Dad was sipping from the same chipped mug he'd had for years. I stood there, hands sweating, voice stuck in my throat. "Can I talk to you both for a second?" They glanced at each other, then back at me like I'd just interrupted something important. I told them everything. About the pain, the specialist, the potential surgery, the cost. The silence afterward was louder than anything I'd ever heard. Mom's first response? A shrug. "That again? You always say your stomach hurts." I wanted to scream. I didn't. I explained it wasn't just a stomachache. It was more. I showed them the papers, the estimate. Dad exhaled like I'd asked for a loan to go to Europe. "We're in a rough patch, honey. Things are tight. Inflation, you know. We just paid for the roof. Maybe you can look into one of those crowdfunding websites. That's what people do now." I nodded slowly. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I said, "Okay," and walked away. They didn't stop me. They didn't ask if I was scared or in pain. They didn't ask if I needed a ride to the hospital. They just turned the volume back up and went back to their show. Later that night, I sat in my room and stared at the same ceiling I grew up under, the one with the little cracks shaped like rivers, and I realized I wasn't just sick. I was truly, utterly alone. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened, took orders, refilled the half and half, cleaned the espresso machine. Every movement sent a throb through my side. I clenched my jaw and pushed through it. Because what else could I do? At home, I avoided meals. Not because I was angry, because I couldn't pretend. I couldn't sit across from them and smile like their indifference hadn't carved something out of me. I grabbed leftovers when no one was looking, ate in silence at the edge of my bed. I didn't bring it up again. Not because I didn't need the help, but because they'd already answered me loud and clear. They didn't see me, not the real me, not the one in pain, not the one quietly asking, "Am I worth saving?" I knew the answer. It was 3 days after they told me no. I was folding laundry on my bed when I heard the crunch of tires in the driveway, followed by laughter, the kind that bubbles out when people are happy without effort. I peeked through the blinds just in time to see Alina stepping out of a rideshare car, her hair perfect, her nails bright red, pulling a suitcase that looked more expensive than my last 3 paychecks combined. She'd come home from college, and the world, as always, was ready to roll out the red carpet. Dad met her on the porch, with a grin wide enough to split his face. "Come out here," he said, waving her over like he was about to show her something magical. She looked confused at first, then followed him toward the driveway. That's when Mom appeared, holding a silver car key tied with a red ribbon. And that's when I saw it. A brand new white Mercedes parked in the middle of the driveway, shining under the morning sun like something out of a commercial. It was pristine, not a scratch on the paint, the chrome glinting like a mirror. Alina froze. Then she squealed, "No freaking way!" and ran into Mom's arms. "You deserve it," Mom said, beaming. "Straight A's, internships, Dean's List, you've earned this." I stood there, still holding a pair of jeans in my hands, heart sinking. Dad walked her around the car like it was a trophy. Fully loaded, sunroof, Bluetooth, leather seats, the works. They posed for pictures, laughed, hugged, cheered. Alina did a little happy dance. The engine purred when Dad started it. I watched her slide into the driver's seat like it had always belonged to her. They were so proud, so generous, so full of joy. And not once did anyone look toward the window where I stood, like I wasn't even there. It wasn't about the car. I didn't want a Mercedes. I wanted to breathe without pain. I wanted to know that if I collapsed in the middle of my shift, someone would care. Apparently, that was too much to ask. That night, I heard them through the walls during dinner. Alina was already talking about how heads turned when she drove onto campus. "People were staring like I was a celebrity," she said, laughing. "One guy literally walked into a bike rack trying to check me out." I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, scrolling through her social media. There she was, leaning against the hood of the Mercedes, captioned with, "Dream big, babes, manifestation works." Heart emojis, fire emojis, comments like, "You're so inspiring and deserved." Deserved. That word hit me harder than anything else. What had she done that I hadn't? Had I not worked hard? Had I not followed the rules? Had I not tried to be the daughter they could be proud of? But none of that mattered, apparently, because I wasn't shiny enough. I wasn't loud enough. I didn't sparkle. I was invisible. So I got up the next morning and picked up an extra shift. Pain still curled behind my ribs like something alive, but I didn't let it slow me down. I cleared tables, brewed coffee, wiped counters. I said, "Have a great day," through gritted teeth while sweat ran down my spine. I didn't complain. I didn't cry. I just moved, because if I stopped, I'd collapse. And when I got home, the house was still full of laughter, still full of talk about the car. I slipped in, grabbed a plate of cold spaghetti from the fridge, and ate on the floor of my room. It was quieter there. No one asked me how my day was. No one asked me anything. I became a ghost in the same house I grew up in, and the silence was louder than any argument could have been. The only time I saw my parents really look at me was when I coughed too loud or left the bathroom light on. Then they noticed. Then they sighed or muttered something under their breath. But not once did anyone say, "Are you okay?" That weekend, Alina left again. She hugged Mom and Dad goodbye and peeled out of the driveway in her new car like she was late for a movie premiere. I watched from behind the curtain, not because I cared, but because I was trying to understand, trying to figure out when exactly I became the spare child. The extra, the one you don't budget for, the one you don't choose. I wasn't bitter. Not really. I was just tired. Tired of being the one who swallowed everything. Tired of pretending it didn't matter. Tired of aching in a body no one wanted to save. And as I lay in bed that night, holding my heating pad against my stomach, I realized something that scared me. I wasn't just invisible. I was becoming numb. I was dragging myself through the front door after a double shift when the knock came. I opened it to find Grandpa standing there, his coat zipped up, cane in hand, eyes sharper than I remembered. "Your parents home?" he asked. I shook my head. "Just me." He looked me over. "You look pale." "I'm just tired," I lied, but my voice cracked. My stomach ached so badly, I could barely stand straight. "Sit," he said, walking into the kitchen like he owned the place. I obeyed. I always did with Grandpa. He didn't raise his voice, didn't scold. He just had that presence, the kind that made you tell the truth. "What's going on?" he asked. I stared at the table. "I might need surgery," I whispered. "The doctor said it's serious. I asked Mom and Dad for help. They said I should take out a loan." He didn't flinch, didn't speak. Just stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. "I saw the car," he said quietly. "The one they bought for Alina." I didn't say anything. "I'll take care of it," he added, standing. "Don't worry." And that was it. No questions, no lectures. He just left. That Sunday, he invited us all to dinner at his house. When we arrived, everything looked normal. The roast chicken, the same tablecloth, the smell of his cinnamon pie. But the air was different, tight. After dessert, Grandpa stood. "I've rewritten my will," he said. "Everything I have will go to the one person in this family who was abandoned when she needed you most." He didn't need to say my name. Everyone knew. Mom blinked rapidly. Dad opened his mouth, but no words came. Grandpa continued, his voice calm but sharp. "She came to you in pain. You told her to figure it out, then turned around and handed your other daughter a brand new car." He laid down a stack of papers, my medical reports, bills, even the estimate for the Mercedes. "Here's what you chose. Here's what you ignored." Alina mumbled, "I didn't ask for the car." Grandpa looked at her. "But you didn't ask about your sister either." Silence, cold and final. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. The next morning, Grandpa came to pick me up without much of a word. He didn't ask how I was feeling or if I was ready. He just said, "Come on, we've got somewhere to be," and waited at the car until I locked the door behind me. An hour later, I was sitting in the pristine lobby of a private hospital, dizzy from disbelief. The place smelled like clean linen and fresh lavender. The receptionist smiled like I belonged there. Grandpa had arranged everything. "Pre-op is already scheduled," he said calmly. "You'll meet the surgeon in an hour." It felt like stepping into a different universe, one where I mattered. The surgery happened the next day. Complicated, the doctor said, but successful. Another week, and I might have been dealing with something irreversible. The words chilled me, but all I could do was whisper, "Thank you," when Grandpa appeared at my bedside, newspaper in hand like it was any other morning. He visited every day. Sometimes he talked, sometimes he just sat, peeling apples with a pocket knife or humming some tune I didn't recognize. He never made me feel like a burden, not once. He just showed up. And for the first time, I realized love didn't need to be loud. It didn't need confetti or praise or Facebook posts. It just needed consistency, quiet presence, someone sitting beside you when everything hurts. When I got discharged, things at home were awkward. Alina tried to speak to me once. She tapped on my door with a mug of herbal tea and hovered like she didn't know where to place it. "I didn't mean for things to be so unfair," she said. "I didn't know it was that serious." I just looked at her. She left before finishing her sentence. My parents didn't say much either. A text from Mom, a call from Dad where he rambled about the weather. No mention of the hospital, no apology, just a weird politeness, like we were coworkers forced to make small talk. But I didn't need them to say anything anymore. I wasn't waiting for a conversation that would never come. Because the truth was, I wasn't the broken one. I'd spent years asking myself what I lacked, why I wasn't enough. But there was never anything wrong with me. I wasn't unlovable. I was just with people who didn't know how to love properly. And once I stopped trying to earn their affection, I started healing. Grandpa kept showing up. Not in grand ways, he wasn't that kind of man. But he'd bring over soup, or fix the leaky faucet, or walk with me to the corner store just so I'd stretch my legs. One afternoon, we sat in his backyard under a big oak tree, sipping ginger ale from glass bottles. "You're doing better," he said, nodding. "I am," I replied, and I meant it. He gave a small smile. "You don't owe anyone anything, you know. Not even the people who gave you life, not if they never gave you love." His words stuck with me long after he said them, because for the first time, someone had acknowledged it out loud, that I wasn't imagining the neglect, that my pain had been real, that I mattered, even if they never saw it. That day, something inside me settled. Grandpa had already rewritten his will, but that wasn't what changed my life. It was that he saw me. He chose me. And that, more than any inheritance, was what truly saved me. Weeks passed. The bruises faded, the stitches dissolved, and my body began to move without wincing. I went on slow walks, sipped soup without nausea, and finally slept through the night. But healing isn't just about the body. It's about the silence, too. It's about learning how to stop measuring your worth by how much someone else claps when you're in pain. My parents didn't suddenly change. There were no grand gestures, no flowers, no apology letters tucked under my pillow. Just polite distance. A text from Mom on a Tuesday asking if I needed more vitamin supplements. A voicemail from Dad saying he'd heard I was back on my feet and hoped I was feeling better. I didn't respond, not because I was bitter, but because I had finally learned the difference between being tolerated and being loved. Alina posted another photo of her car last week. The caption read, "Still can't believe this beauty is mine." People flooded her comments again. Heart emojis, Queen comments, flames, and applause. Let them. She lives in a world that claps for polished surfaces. I live in a quieter one now, one that values the sound of footsteps outside your hospital room when everyone else has gone home. I still visit Grandpa every Sunday. Sometimes we talk, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we sit on his back porch and just exist, letting the wind do the talking. Last week, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a deed to a small cabin upstate. "Needs work," he said, "but it's yours if you want it. Somewhere to breathe." I didn't cry, but my throat tightened in that painful, beautiful way. The way it does when you realize someone truly sees you and asks for nothing in return. That cabin, that surgery, that seat across the Sunday table, they weren't rewards. They were recognition, proof that I mattered, that someone noticed the invisible girl in the back of the room. That love, when it's real, doesn't come with conditions. It just shows up. Grandpa did more than save my life. He reminded me I had one. And maybe the most unexpected part? He didn't need to. He wasn't obligated to fight for me. He just did, quietly, fiercely, without asking for anything back. That's love. That's family. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you won't. But if you're lucky, someone else will choose to. And when they do, don't look back. That's where healing lives. Not in their regret, not in their silence, but in the arms of someone who chose to see you when no one else did.